Good morning, everyone, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I think it's evening in India. It's, we're all gathered here for the celebration of Swami Ram's Jayanti, Swami Ram's birthday. And we have John and Denise in Los Angeles. John, Denise, say hi to our audience.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
So through Swamiji's inspiration, we always start these different functions with a recitation of the mantra which he highly revered at the end of his life, which is the Agora Mantra. So Claudia, who's right here beside me, will put that up, and we'll recite this mantra together. And everybody can recite along with us, of course. Om Agorebhyo Tagorebhyo Gora Gora Taribhyascha Sarvata Sharva Sarvebhyo Namaste Rudra Rupebhya Agorebhyo Tagorebhyo Gora Gora Taribhyascha Sarvata Sharva Sarvebhyo Namaste Rudra Rupebhya Agorebhyo Tagorebhyo Gora Gora Taribhyascha Sarvata Sharva Sarvebhyo Namaste Rudra Rupebhya. O Lord Shiva, you alone transform yourself into all forms, into the forms of the powers of Rudra as Agora, the enlightening and uplifting energy, Goratari, the frightening, darkening energy, which pushes one down, and Gora, the energy which keeps one fixed, neither rising or falling. These forms, embodied in Rudra Shiva, are helpful to aspirants while they are aware, and frightful for the ones who are ignorant, pushing them down and down. So what we thought we should do is, of course, Swami Ram left this world back in 1915, when Swami Lakshmanjoo was just 8 years of age. And rather than just sit and listen to us talking about Swami Ram and our memories, all of which we've gained through Swamiji's brief interludes about Swami Ram, we thought we should just show some pictures and just give whatever comes to mind and whatever sort of comes up with those pictures. Of course, this is Swami Ram's Jayanti 2021 and our presentation from the Lakshmanjoo Academy. So of course, first the picture of Swami Ram, which there were very few pictures of Swami Ram ever taken. This is the one which we are probably most familiar with, and in this, we could say that Swami Ram, it's just a little bit of history about him himself. He was born into a very pious family of Pandit Shukadev on the 18th of December in 1854. And according to the Kashmiri calendar, that was the 12th day, which is Dwadashi, of the dark fortnight of Krishna Paksh, in the 10th month, which is Capricorn, so which is, around these days. It was indicated, Swamiji tells us, that the stars at that time were very favorable and indicated that Swami Ram would one day be destined to attain the state of Jivan Mukta. And Swami Ram, going with the Kashmiri tradition, as he grew up, he studied with his father, who was a priest. And Swami Ram became a priest. He learned all of the priestly duties. and he married at a very young age and had one son. But in 1885, when Swami Ram was just 29 years old, there was a massive earthquake in Kashmir, and more than 3,000 people perished in that earthquake. And along with those 3,000 was Swami Ram's wife and his son. And it was a very painful experience, we're told. But Swami Ram accepted his family tragedy as the will of Lord Shiva, and he then felt being freed from social and family responsibilities. He began to devote really long hours to his study and practice of Shiva Yoga, Kashmir Shaivism. And he'd already completed, by the age of 29, he'd already completed his formal study. And it was around that time that his father also introduced him to Pandit Mansaram Mongra, who was popularly known as Swami Mahatab Kak. And it was from Swami Mahatab Kak that Swami Ram was introduced into what's called the Kaula system of Kashmir Shaivism. He continued to do his priestly activities, and it just so happened that Swamiji's father, Pandit Narayan Das, was one of, we could say, his clients. Client doesn't sound like the right word, but was one of the families for whom Swami Ram used to, do his priestly duties. But what did take place there was that Swamiji's father, and we'll show a picture of Swamiji's father in a few moments, he basically took Swami Ram not as the family priest, but as his guru. And he saw that Swami Ram needed a place to do his practice, and he provided his own home to start with. He invited Swami Ram to come and live in the family home. But as time went on, he saw that this was also a little bit too active. And Swamiji's father, he dedicated a building and the middle floor of a building to Swami Ram so that Swami Ram could remain aloof from everybody else. He provided everything for him. And for 20 years, Swami Ram did his very serious spiritual practice in that room. And that building is still standing today. That's known as the Ram Trika Ashram. So in the next slide, as I said, there are very, very few pictures of Swami Ram, but this is a picture of Swami Ram in his meditation. And after he attained his state of elevation, liberation, that, as he explained himself, he just practiced assiduously. He never really left that room. Swamiji once, in his own words, he explained, Swami Ram's intense period of sadhana. And he said that from the age of 35, these are Swamiji's words, from the age of 35 to 50, which goes from 1890 to 1910, Swami Ram was continuously engaged in the most intense sadhana. During this period, Abhinavagupta's Paratrishika Vivarana was his constant companion. And that was in that last picture you saw Swami Ram holding a book. And that book is the Paratrishika Vivarana, which was translated, verses from the Rudrayamala Tantra, translated by Abhinavagupta. And he said sometimes he would read only one page and then sit in silently in one position. And he would meditate on that subtle meaning of that for the next 14 days. He was unperturbed about his physical condition. He didn't maintain any formal time schedule, and except when he found it necessary to use the bathroom, he would remain in one place and in one posture for months on end. It was in this state that he lost all concern about his personal hygiene and his physical surroundings. But once in a while, Swamiji said, my mother would send my sister or sisters to attend on Swami Ram's needs. At great pains, they would convince the introverted saint to let them wash his clothes, his pheran. And in doing so, they would find there were bugs and things which Swami Ram remained unperturbed about. He felt that they were insignificant things. Most of the time, he was in a deep state of samadhi. And this was his routine for 20 years. And Swamiji, during this time, his knees became partly paralyzed. But despite this, as Swamiji said, he was always smiling because he was continually blissful inside. And so in the next slide, this is a picture of Swami Ram with Swamiji's parents, Arnimala and Narayan Das. And what Swami Ram, this is again, the book that he's holding there is the Paratashika Vivarana. And once Swami Ram attained that state of, his own state of Jivan Mukta, he realized the connection with this unbroken sampradaya, this unbroken oral tradition. And his main task then was to continue this lineage, this teaching of Kashmir Shaivism. So everything that he did from that time onwards was an effort towards the continuation of this, this wonderful tradition that we're all just touching on today, that we're all just absorbing some of today. And this goes back, remember that for 5,000 years ago, it was Lord Shiva himself who designated the Durvasa Rishi as the custodian of Shaivism throughout the whole of Kali Yuga, which goes for 5,000 years. So Swami Ram, he had a relationship with Swamiji's father, but he was also revered by the then Maharaja, Pratap Singh. And around about 1905, or maybe late 1800s actually, he requested the Maharaja to gather all of the texts, the main texts of Kashmir Shaivism, which had been lost for more than 500 years, or at least misplaced. Pratap Singh was following in the footsteps of his own father, Ranbir Singh, they were both very spiritual monarchs, and they had both wanted to bring, spirituality back to the valley of Kashmir in the form of, Kashmir Shaivism. So this work was taken up by Pratap Singh, and eventually what Swami Ram's request was to bring all of these books together, all the manuscripts that were scattered here and there, and have them published under one heading or one library. And that eventually became the Kashmir series of texts and studies. But from there, Swami Ram needed to find that there has to be somebody who will carry on this lineage after he left this world. And he entrusted the immediate discipleship to his immediate disciple and his chief disciple, Swami Mahatab Kak. And Swami Mahatab Kak, before Swami Ram left this world, he also told Swami Mahatab Kak that there is one boy who you must take on as a disciple. And in the next slide, you'll see a picture of, this is the birth of Swami Lakshmanjoo. Now, it was Swamiji's parents who requested Swami Ram, this is some years later now, all these texts are being gathered, they requested Swami Ram to bless them with the birth of a son. And Swami Ram did just that. He gave Swamiji's mother some almonds, and he said, not only will you have a son, he will be a great scholar of Shaivism. So this is, you have to understand Swami Ram's greatness and his foresight and his connection with this tradition, in seeing that not just his immediate disciple will carry it on, but his disciple's chief disciple. And Swamiji was that. Swamiji was the chief disciple of Swami Mahatab Kak. And there's another picture here which just gives you a bit of a flavor. This is Swamiji's father. He was very entrepreneurial. Once he devoted his life to Swami Ram, everything he touched turned to gold. He became extremely wealthy. He was the first person to build houseboats, at least accommodational houseboats in Kashmir. He was a very close associate with the king of Kashmir, the Maharaja Pratap Singh. And he treated Swami Ram as his personal guru, and he looked after all of Swami Ram's needs from the time that he had him come and stay in the Trika ashram until the time of him leaving this world. And there's another picture there, an older picture of Swamiji's parents, his mother, Arnimala, and Narayan Das, both together. So it was now for the tradition to carry on. Swami Ram himself was considered as Swamiji's personal guru from the age of Swamiji's birth up until the time that Swamiji was about 8 years old. If we can see the next picture. This picture was taken just after Swamiji's sacred thread ceremony in 1915. It was shortly before Swami Ram left this world. And it was a sacred thread ceremony for Swamiji, who's sitting in the middle there between his mother and one of his sisters. And his two, sorry, no, Swamiji is not in the middle. Swamiji is sitting at the right of his mother. And then his other two younger brothers are between his mother and sister, and then the other one on the right of the picture. They all took their sacred thread ceremony directly from Swami Ram. And Swamiji says, I was initiated into the sacred Gayatri mantra by my grandmaster, Swami Ram, who again, after a very short period of time after this, left this world. Then from there, Swamiji, of course, it wasn't until he was 15 or 16 years old that he took up his discipleship with Swami Mahatab Kak. Swami Mahatab Kak kept his eye on Swamiji all this time, but it was Swami Ram's direct instruction that Swami Mahatab Kak, as his chief disciple, should take Swamiji as his own disciple and carry on. And what was interesting, going back there before, that Swami Ram requested the Maharaja to gather all the texts of Kashmir Shaivism. By the time Swamiji himself was 17 years old, he began his formal study, and all of the text, all of the important texts were there. They were available. And Swamiji just started to study those teachings with his own Shaiva teacher or scholar by the name of Maheshwara Razdan. But the very subtle points of Kashmir Shaiva philosophy, points which even his Vidya Guru didn't understand, Swamiji would present to his own master, Swami Mahatab Kak, and he would answer them very freely. In the next, I think there's another slide after this. Okay, so we're moving ahead, but I'll go back to Swami Ram in a minute. This was 1942 when Swamiji's own master, Swami Mahatab Kak, left this world. This was his Mahasamadhi. And you can see Swamiji there sitting in front of the pictures. His mother is just to Swamiji's right. The family priest then, who was the father of Shamlal Jattu, who eventually became Swamiji's priest for all of the habans and functions that Swamiji did, and Swamiji's father again to the left. Swamiji said it was a very sad time when his master left this world. Now, there's another picture after this, I think, in the next slide. Okay, so this is a little montage that I have put together because generally in Shaivism, you revere your guru, your guru's guru, and your grandmaster. So Swamiji, Swami Mahatab Kak, and Swami Ram. And that picture on the left again is a painting taken from that picture. Those two pictures in color Swamiji has hanging in his temple in Kashmir. He had an artist commissioned to paint those pictures. And the other picture in the middle is Swamiji. It was taken around 1962. Swamiji would have been 55 at that time. He'd just moved from the upper ashram down to his lower ashram. Now, I don't know if Claudia, well, if you can go back to that picture of Swami Ram with, okay, let's just dwell for a moment here on Swami Ram and the book that he's holding. This is the Paratrishika Vivarana, as we mentioned, and it is a very deep philosophical texts, mainly on the understanding of the Sanskrit alphabet, but not just the Sanskrit alphabet as it's taught everywhere in India. But in Kashmir Shaivism, there are two aspects of this alphabet. One is called Matrika, which is the alphabet like A, B, C, D in an orderly fashion. And the other one is called Malini, which is the alphabet mixed up. And even before Abhinavagupta, even before the time of Abhinavagupta, more than 1,000 years ago, very few people understood what is the significance, what is the nature of this alphabet of Malini. And it was Abhinavagupta during his lifetime who wrote this incredible encyclopedia of spirituality called Tantra Loka. And in Tantra Loka, for the first time, he reveals the secrets of, and very briefly reveals the secrets of what Malini is all about. It's very difficult to find any talk about Malini, even before Abhinavagupta's time. And Swami Ram really delved deeply into this whole concept of Malini. And Swamiji too. Swamiji considered himself that this was the real cream of Shaivism, to understand both of these alphabets and how they fit together in the nature of creation. And once a question was put to Swamiji about who in this world, one professor came, I think from Italy, it was Professor Noli, who wrote on Tantra Loka in Italian. And he asked Swamiji, who has understood this Malini? And Swamiji said that there's only 3 masters who've really understood Malini. And he said, Abhinavagupta, Swami Ram, and then he said, oh, and Swami Lakshmanjoo. And then he started to laugh and he said, no, I was only kidding about Swami Lakshmanjoo. But really he wasn't, because he obviously understood the intricacies of Malini. And I just wondered, John or Denise, do you want to add anything at all over, just to say anything about what do you remember Swamiji said about Swami Ram? And
Swamiji's mother, Arnimal, right? Arnimal.
Yes.
She served Swami Ram directly. She also made sure that he was comfortable and that he needed whatever was necessary. And at some point she decided that she wanted to have another son. And so she went to see Swami Ram and she requested that he grant her her wish to have another son, to give birth to another son. And so he gave her 5 almonds to eat and then told her she would conceive a son in short time, which she did. And when Swamiji gave birth to when Swamiji's mother gave birth to Swamiji, Swami Ram stood up and danced. And his legs were paralyzed, but for that moment he stood up and danced, and he shouted, declaring, I am Rama, he is Lakshmana. And that picture that you saw of Swami Ram holding
Swamiji.
Yeah, holding the baby. Claudia painted that. So it shows the joy and bliss of Swami Ram and Swamiji's mother and whoever else was there. It was a very joyful time. And I went to, along with John and some other devotees from the ashram, with Swamiji to the Ram ashram once. I went a number of times, but the first time I went, I really felt the vibration. It was really, really a beautiful place to be. And there were so many of us. I think there were about 30 devotees. So it was packed. And we were offered lunch and we took that there. And I felt that I'd been there before. I just felt, it just seemed very familiar and very, very inviting and very vibrated. Another time, I went with Swamiji to Ram Ashram for Swami Ram's Mahasamadhi celebration. And so that was upstairs from where we had taken lunch and where we had gone the first time. And we sat right in front, and I guess it was on the top of the house. And there were a lot of openings for the smoke to go out. And it was just exhilarating. Number one, being there with Swamiji, and number two, you know, the chanting, it just seemed so ancient and so beautiful. I really enjoyed that. And then afterwards, they gave us prasad. And so Swamiji would talk about Swami Ram from time to time. He had great regard and love for him. You could always tell that. And he chose Swami Mahatab Kak as Swamiji's guru after he left his body, after Swami Ram left his body. And Swamiji, you know, he learned meditation from his elder brother, Maheshwaranatha. And his brother was very devoted to Swami Ram. And he would get up early in the morning and he would meditate. And he kept Swamiji in the same room with him. He wanted him to be close to him. He could feel the greatness of Swamiji. And Swamiji at a certain time asked his brother, he said, could you initiate me and teach me how to meditate? And he did. And so Swamiji meditated, and he immediately went into some other state, and he fainted. And this happened a number of times, and his parents were very concerned that he had some illness. So they took him to Swami Ram, and Swami Ram said, no, he has no illness. He said, if I could only be experiencing what he's experiencing, the early states of God consciousness. And so he said to put butter on his forehead every day. And they did that, melted butter. And that helped somewhat, but still, when he would sit to meditate, he would go into these states. And I think because his nervous system, he still was a child, you know, wasn't completely developed, he would faint. And I remember hearing the stories where his sisters would come and massage him when that happened, and just very gently bring him back to consciousness. I thought that maybe that's a painting that Claudia could.
He had a lot of sisters, didn't he?
Well, he had his sisters, and then there were Bhagavan Das's sisters.
Who's Bhagavan Das?
Huh?
Who is Bhagavan Das?
Bhagavan Das was his nephew.
Maheshwarananda's son, is that right?
Whose?
His older brother's son, is that right? Bhagavan Das was?
I guess so, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I think that's it for now.
No, he's very special, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody had high regards for him. He was a mysterious, understood to be a very powerful master, very very advanced, almost.
And he would sit every day at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and devotees would come, and he would go into samadhi for a couple hours, and then he'd come out. And I think he gathered quite a few devotees who would sit there at that time, just absorbing the divine vibration coming from
Swami Ram, you're talking about.
Ram. Yeah.
Wonderful time to celebrate this day.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a beautiful poem. There was a verse that Swami Ram used to recite, and he had disciples recite this. This was after his realization. He said Swami Ram attained a state of a siddha, where he would effortlessly immerse himself in the posture of what's called Shambhavi Mudra, the posture of Shiva. And this condition is best described in Swami Ram's own words. Swamiji said that when Swami Ram used to do his afternoon, like Denisha said, from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m., he said he would take his lunch, and then he would sit after lunch and he would just take some snuff. It said it was his habit. He said, but it wasn't a habit that like other people have habits. He said he was immersed in that state of God consciousness, and he would just take some snuff. He would take a few puffs on a hubble bubble, and then Swamiji said, and he would just easily go into this really deep state. But he said for the first half an hour, devotees were instructed not to make too much noise. But after half an hour, he said they could bang kettle drums and make any noise they wanted, and Swami Ram was not disturbed at all, you know, for the next 2.5, 3 hours of being in that state. And Swami Ram, the way he explained it in this verse was, all of my ignorance got dispelled when I learnt the truth from the lips of my respected guru, whose word was as sacred as the Shastras itself. Immediately my mind realized the oneness of life, and tasting the loving nectar of equality, my mind dived deep into the ocean of divine consciousness. The web of thought finally settled down in a state of nirvikalpa samadhi, thoughtless meditation. Thus, the indescribable supreme consciousness was revealed to me in its perfection. And many of Swami Ram's devotees will still recognize that verse, and you know, the Ram Ashram, they still sing that verse, and Swamiji used to revere that particular verse also. And the other point is that Swami Ram, in telling Pratap Singh to get all of these manuscripts together, the first manuscript was, of course, the Shiva Sutras, which was the foundational text of Kashmir Shaivism by Vasugupta. And these texts started to come out over a period from 1911, I think, up to about 1945 or 46. But years after Swami Ram had left this world, in fact, around about 30 years or more, he appeared to Swamiji, and Swamiji doesn't say, Swamiji just says he appeared to me. He came in my heart, and he requested me to publish Abhinavagupta's Bhagavad Gita. So in 1933, Swamiji published in Sanskrit the Bhagavad Gita. And it's not surprising that that was the one book which was actually, you know, not done properly in the Kashmir series. The original one was full of mistakes. And so here was Swami Ram just not leaving any stone unturned, requesting Swamiji at the age of, I think now Swamiji was 23 or 24 years old. No, 25, because he had now finished his formal studies. He had moved from the city to an ashram above in the hills, you know, near Gupta Ganga. And that was the first thing that he did. In fact, Swamiji said to his father, I want to publish a book, and I want you to give me the money that you've designated for my dowry for marriage, because I'm not going to marry. And I want to publish Abhinavagupta's Bhagavad Gita. And for the last, for the last so many months, we have been very fortunate that John and Denise traveled to Nepal in 1990. And Swamiji recorded his translation of that entire text of the Bhagavad Gita. And we've been playing it. We're already up to week 38 or 39. We've been playing that every Saturday morning here in Los Angeles, the video and Swamiji's translation, and going through it very slowly to explain and then answering questions. But that's the very book Swamiji is holding is the one that he published himself in 1933, using his father's his dowry, well, his allowance for his wedding. And in that particular text, in chapter 15, there's a verse which Abhinavagupta quotes from one of his own hymns, which has been lost. It's called the Devi Stotra or Shiva Shakti Stotra. This verse summarizes what the real meaning of Malini and Matrika are, that how speech is everything that we do in the world, and how all speech is a manifestation of the Divine Mother, this Ambika, as it is pointed out in this verse. So we thought it'd be nice to have a flavor of that, since this was the book that Swami Ram himself inspired Swamiji to republish.
Tavujga janana stutiram bike sakal shabdamai kilite tanu nikhil muhur dishume bhavatanayo manasi jazubahish prasara sucha. It is Devi Stotra by Abhinavagupta. Tavujika janana tudirambike. O mother, O mother, tavaja kachana stuti. By sitting in meditation room aloof, leaving all activities aside and thinking of you Om Paravak Deve Nama, Om Paravak Deve Nama, Om Paravak Deve Nama, Om Parabhairavaya Nama, Parabhairavaya Nama, like this. And reciting my name, that is not your stuti. The Abhinavagupta says, that is actually not your stuti. One who sings glory in the secluded corner of puja room, with all doors shut. Why? Why it is not that? Sakal shabdamai kilde tanu. O mother, O great mother, Swadhandra Shakti, this is jug, this is paneer, this is lime juice, this is ghee, this is paratha. Sakal Shabdamai, this is also your stuti. When I perceive this is also your stuti. Sakal Shabd, you are not excluded there. Sakal Shabdamai Kilite Tanu, this is existing in the body of your, in your universal body, O mother. So, Nikhil Muhurtishu me bhavadhanayo. And Murti, you have got 4 arms, 18 heads, like this. This is not your body. Nikhil Muhurtishu me bhavadhanayo. When I see Viresh, I see mother, I see mother. When I see Jonathan, I see mother. When I see George, I see mother. When I see that Shikhas, that bad, I see mother. Nikhil Murtishu me Bhavatanayo, I am united in thee, O mother. Manasija Subahish Prasara Sujam. And while thinking of thoughts, in those thoughts also you are existing for me. Yadi vichinti shive shamidha shive. Going in the depth. So, myself, after going in the depth of this secret of thee, Jagati Jatamayatna Vashatyadam. I find that in this universe it has happened automatically. What? Tutijapar chanachin tanvare jita nakaluka janakal karha pimim. Each and every moment I am adoring you, thinking of you, O Divine Mother. I have no one in you, only you. You are existing in me, in each and every murti, in each and every step, in each and every movement of this world. So this way you should think this state of Parabhairava, not only in individual shikas way.
All those great songs and stotras and things of Abhinavagupta and of our Shaivism, they always sing the glory of this world that we live in, the glory of this creation, the glory of everything. You know, they don't shun anything. Everything is to be included. In fact, this whole world is a means for that realization. Nicely done, wonderful.
It's also that verse, apart from the fact that we're broadcasting that free online every Saturday with a link from the website, people can join that Saturday Sangha. I think it's about an hour after the Sangha that you have in India each week. But shortly, just within the next, well, it depends on the publishers, but shortly we'll be publishing Tantra Loka 2 and 3, which has a whole section on Matrika. And Swamiji mentions Malini in that, not in great detail, but that's the 3rd chapter of Abhinavagupta's Tantra Loka, where he goes into minute detail about this Sanskrit alphabet, which is again what Swami Ram, because this is about Swami Ram's Jayanti, Swami Ram considered that this knowledge of Malini and Matrika was the supreme knowledge and the cream of Kashmir Shaivism to understand. That's why that verse is very, very important and pregnant with meaning of the whole of Shaiva philosophy, that, as John just said, this whole universe is an expression of God consciousness. Everything around us is that.
And is filled with God consciousness, the whole universe.
Yeah. So I think that we've probably said our little contribution. We can't fathom the gratitude that we can put before Swami Ram's feet, because we're all here studying today by virtue of his own direct connection with this wonderful magical lineage of Kashmir Shaiva masters. And we have this great fortune to carry on and study these teachings. So John, Denise, you want to finish off here?
Yes, we're all very fortunate, and we hope that you're all doing well during this time of pandemic, and you're keeping healthy and strong and doing your practice and studying, and all these things are good now for us, important.
And although I said nothing during this time, I want to say that thank you for letting us be here. Thank you. I was learning too. I was listening to George, listening to the stories of George. He's our storyteller, and he and Denise. So those are the two storytellers. I sit back and I listen to them. So I enjoyed today a lot. Great day today. Was his birthday on the 1st of January? Is that his son's birthday? I mean that.
Yes.
Well, it's his lunar birthday that they celebrate, and I didn't even look up the Kashmiri calendar to see, but it's on the 12th day. It's Dwadashi, the 12th day of this lunar fortnight of Krishna Paksh. So it's coming up. I think it probably culminates around, someone will have to correct me, I think it's around the 10th of this month, maybe earlier. But that's irrelevant. So I would think that every day is Swami Ram's birthday. when you're in that universal state, there's no time. So it's the same for Swamiji.
Well, God bless everyone for being here.
Yes. Yeah. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
तव जिगा जनन स्तुतिरं बिके सकल शब्दमयी किलते तनु निखिल मुहूर्दिशु में भवतन्नयो मनसि जासु बहिः प्रसरासु च